In this video, we're going to show you how to knit a heart using the How to Knit a Heart coaster project from gathered.how. We're going to start by casting on the stitches we need for this pattern. You can see our hands in motion demoing the how to cast on as we cast on these 5 stitches. We do have another video tutorial on how to cast on in knitting, which we'll put a link for you in now. It's worked entirely in knit stitch with one simple increase and one simple decrease to shape your heart, and uses a very clever technique of knitting 2 pieces side by side together, which we'll explore as we go further into this video. Once you've cast on those 5 stitches, you can knit your first row straight away, working back along the row, knitting all stitches. Turn your work ready for row 2, which begins with the simple increase, knit front and back. Here, with the first stitch in this row, you knit into the front of the stitch, and then, without casting off, you knit into the back as well, so you end up with 2 stitches where you had one originally. Knit the rest of the stitches on row 2 as normal knit stitch. Turn your work ready for row 3, where you knit all stitches all along the row. Turn your work ready for row 4. In row 4, we're going to have an increase in the last stitch of the row, so knit every stitch in the row as normal until you get to the very last stitch, when we're going to knit front and back. Knit into the front of the stitch, and keeping the stitch on the needle, knit into the back too. Turn your work ready for row 5, where you should knit all stitches. Turn your work for row 6, which begins with a knit front and back increase. Knit into the front of the stitch, and keeping the stitch on the needle, knit into the back too. You then knit the rest of the stitches in the row as normal. The next 4 rows are plain knit rows, so knit 4 more rows of knit stitch. Cut your yarn, leaving a short yarn tail of 1 inch or 2, and then push your block of knitting down to the far end of your needle. We're going to cast on another 5 stitches and do exactly the same thing again. This is knitting the top half of our heart, so we're knitting the 2 hillocks of the heart. The first one we've now got resting on one side of the needle. We're going to stitch a whole other hillock to make our heart shape. We've cast on our 5 stitches, and we're going to repeat rows 1 to 10 of the pattern exactly as we did for the first hillock. We're coming back to our film where we've got the 2 identical heart top pieces sitting alongside each other on the needle, and we're just going to knit all the way across both pieces of the knitting. This will join them into one piece of knitting on the same needle. We're now going to knit 4 more rows of knit stitch. Coming back to our film for row 16, you can see how those 4 rows of knit stitch have really lengthened out the body of the heart, and now we're ready to start shaping to move it down towards the point. We're going to do this with the simple decrease knit 2 together. So for row 16, the first stitch we're doing is the knit 2 together. Put the tip of your right hand needle through the second and first stitch on the left hand needle and knit the 2 together. You're left with 1 stitch where you had 2 before. The final 2 stitches on row 16 also use the knit 2 together decrease. So knit your way across the row until you get to the final 2 stitches and then knit the 2 stitches together. Row 17 is a plain knit row, so knit all the stitches in the row. Row 18 is a decrease row, so you start with knitting the 2 stitches together, you then knit across to the final 2 stitches of the row, and you knit those 2 together. Row 19 is a plain knit row, so knit all stitches in the row. The stitch pattern is going to carry on like this now. So for each of the even rows, they're a decrease row. You start with a knit 2 together, knit to the last 2 stitches of the row, and then knit 2 together. And then all the odd rows are plain knit rows. And the number of stitches between your 2 knit 2 togethers is going to come down each time. So continue with the pattern in this way until you are left with just 2 stitches remaining on your needle. In row 28, there are no knit stitches between your knit 2 togethers. So you knit 2 together, knit 2 together, and you're left with 2 stitches on your needle. Cut your yarn shell to a couple of inches, thread the tail through the 2 stitches remaining on your needle and pull tight.